Otherwise, you wake up and someone like James Schramko is still banging away in your ear at 5 in the morning.
Well, funnily enough, I put my iPad on my bedside table earlier in the week, and I was reading my Kindle in bed, and I thought, somebody's talking to me, and I thought I was hallucinating. I thought, I'd accidentally turned on, but funnily enough, it was me coming from our podcast on my. I must have accidentally pressed a button. I could hear myself talking to me.
Oh, that's spooky. Welcome to Own It, Your Business and Your Life, with Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. In this podcast, we're going to cover everything you need to embrace to become a successful entrepreneur, marketing, money, and much, much more. How to create a business doing just what you love. How to own it, your business and your life. This one will be fast, funny, feisty, and very lively. So sit back and enjoy the show. So how's your week been, Judith?
Well, I think it's been rather strange, Nicola. I'll explain if I may. I'm sure our listeners would understand that we record these about 10 days before they actually go out. So it'll be rather odd listening to what I'm about to say in 10 days' time. But of course, the big event of the week has been the eclipse, the supermoon, and the spring equinox. And we didn't see it in London because we were covered in cloud. Did you see it down where you are?
No, my daughter was very disappointed.
Yeah, I think quite rightly. I mean, the pictures on the web and on the telly and everything were fantastic, but it's not quite the same as being there. And some of my friends did see it, and I felt a great deal of envy. But, we're all a bit woo-woo in my gang, and we've all been affected by the moon. And there are lots of people who they live their lives by the cycles of the moon. And it's had an exhilarating impact on Friday, and then over the weekend, people have sort of had a bit of an eclipse come down, I'm calling it. It was all very exciting on Friday, and it sort of lasted over the weekend, and then it is spring-like, even though our clocks haven't gone forward quite yet at the time of recording. It's still done by the time people are listening, but it's Monday morning was strange. I don't know if you noticed Monday was strange this week. Did you have any strange goings on Monday?
Well, I've been discombobulated all week, actually. In fact, I'm
there you go. Yeah. That's exactly my point. You've made my point for me. Thank you.
And I don't even believe in all that stuff. So.
No, I know you don't. No, I know you don't, but there you go.
Yeah. So anything else about your week apart from the eclipse?
No, not really. I thought that was mega.
A highlight, yes.
Yeah, I thought it was mega. It's sort of, leading up to it, 2 or 3 days leading up to it, and 2 or 3 days leading down from it. That's a week, isn't it?
Yeah, I really did enjoy some of the television coverage, and you did get a great view, particularly for that bird who was in a plane somewhere.
Yes, I know. And I saw her talking to Brian Cox and Dara O'Brien afterwards, and they said you seemed genuinely moved by the experience. I mean, who wouldn't be if you're up there in the sky with that going on? Because it's not going to happen again for quite a long time. That big one where the moon is, centrally over it. They have partial eclipses and things, but one like that isn't going to happen for a very long time. So, who knows where we'll all be next time.
Yeah, it's and it does throw you back a little bit, because obviously I'm always constantly trying to explain things to the kids about what things were like in the olden days.
Yeah.
Whether I'm talking about 1990 or 1960 or whether 300 years ago,
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, it must have been very terrifying for people who didn't know what was going on, just out in the fields tending their flocks, as it were.
Oh, I know. I mean, it must have been biblical, mustn't it? The sky went dark. Yes, it's like God speaking to you, isn't it? Or Moses or something. It's absolutely right. Fortunately, it only lasts for about 3 minutes, but even so.
And men and women are meaning-making machines, as we know, so they would have had to explain something, but sometimes they got it very badly wrong, didn't they? That throwing, babies off of Aztec temples could stop the next eclipse.
They did.
Things like that.
They did. I don't know if you remember Matthew Lloyd Winder, the stained glass man.
I do, yes.
Yeah, he went to Stonehenge to see it last Friday, and of course I don't know how old Stonehenge is, but Stonehenge is all about looking at the sun and things, isn't it? So that's quite a good place to be, a good advantage point, perhaps.
Well,
and I think they saw it. I think they saw it in Stonehenge. There was clouds were parted.
Oh well, the atmosphere in these places is always pretty special, isn't it? I love graveyards because of that. I don't know whether I'm totally imagining it, but I always feel some sort of sense of peace and continuity in graveyards.
Yeah, well, I think it's the same thing, actually. Death in a graveyard and the moon and the sun, which are millennia old and will go on for millennia afterwards, both of those do what I think I talked about last week, which is it reminds you that you're just a little 10 dot on this planet, and get over yourself, doesn't it?
It does. I've been feeling rather overwhelmed and daunted this week, which is, not in a really sort of upset or sad way or anything. We're coming up to the 1st of April, which is when I go, swap to my new accounting system and go, my VAT registration starts and all that business. And I've also started working with, two other people part-time in addition to Sarah. I'm just feeling a bit, God, I don't know where to start really. And haven't I just tripled my workload? Because obviously, when you take people on, you have to give them things to do, and that in itself takes time to record the videos and delegate, and then supervise and make sure it's done right and everything, and then the whole thing about running an online bookkeeping system on top of my spreadsheet, which I'm going to have to continue doing just because I like the minute by minute control of it. I just feel like I've added to my workload temporarily, and all that at a time when I'm about to go away for 10 days for the first time in ages, and I've also committed to several of these, joint venture roundtable, collaborative, promotional marketing things. And they all come at once, and they keep all sending me long, 3 pages of complicated instructions, and I just can't take it in,
No. Well, if you can't take it in, what hope for the rest of us? I mean, sometimes people invite me to things like that, and I can just about cope with that. But I think it explains why they sometimes don't work, because unless you have a team of equally internet savvy people with the time to follow the instructions, I think those instructions can be overwhelming for people who would be fantastic on a roundtable summit thing in terms of their expertise. But if they don't have a tech team, then they don't really work, do they?
No, they don't. And I'm going to have to start saying no to things because I'm a joiner. I'm a joiner and a involved person, and it's just I've just found this week as I've ended up sending the wrong agreements to the wrong people, and this is something my VA should be doing. I know that, but the time it would take to brief her, she's sort of quite new still. I don't know. I
think it's an interesting choice actually, and I know that you'll go on from your 3 to make it bigger, but the question, the conundrum is, do I prefer to just work by myself? It's a Mexican fisherman, isn't it? Do I prefer to just work by myself or make 3 times as work to employ 2 other people? It's the same difference, isn't it? And we know that you have a chance to grow a business that way, whereas we're exchanging time for money and being self-employed the other way. But it is a straight choice, and I think both of them have pros and cons, don't they?
They do. I mean, I had to make that choice recently, and it's well, because of the other things I'm going to talk about today. They all sort of link into each other really, but I feel, I went to see Darren Sherlaw talking a while ago, and he says that this is probably the last boom any of us are going to experience before we retire, if we can retire at all. So I really want to make hay while the sun's shining, and the sun is certainly shining at the moment, and I really want to take advantage of that and put myself into a position I've never been in before, which is, the chance to perhaps buy a house outright for things like that, and I can't do that on my own. So I have to.
I've had lunch, or it might have been breakfast, with Darren Sherlaw, and one of his ladies tried quite hard to recruit me to join their organisation. This was a while back, but I'm impressed by this concept of a boom. Darren sees a boom coming, does he?
Well, I saw him speak at a Daniel Priestley event about 2 years ago, and he said we're in a double dip recession, and he predicted it would end March this year, and. Every sign is that, everyone's feeling more optimistic, everyone's making more money. It does feel like things are improving. They certainly are in my neck of the woods, that's for sure.
Good. Not in mine yet, but March, we've still got another 6 days off. So thanks, Darren. I'll look forward to it next week.
But then he says, booms and busts. Booms normally last about 10 years. And so this will, and it really struck home to me when he said that this is probably the last boom I'll experience before, I get to retirement age. And so I really do want to make hay while the sun shines, especially as I seem to have hit on a winning formula with clicksandleads.com. And so, I want to make the most of it. And I can't make the most of it on my own because I found out, even with 10 clients, I've got clients coming in quicker than I can process them. So I don't want to let those people down. I want to do a really good job. And that means me doing the bits only I can do and handing the rest off to other people. But it just feels a bit overwhelmed. The bookkeeping and admin bits particularly, I'm not good at that, as you know.
Yeah, get some help, I would.
Yeah, not my strengths, as we all know. What's fueled your fire this week then?
Well, like last week, it's another blog post, but this time it was written by a client of mine. I am going to read it to you because it's very short. And her name is Sally, and Sally is, God, I'm so drawn to Sally because her whole ethos is the opposite to mine. Sally is slow. Sally is slow, and you and I are fast. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but there's always an attraction of opposites, to people who look chilled and who've got plenty of time for everything. And Sally wouldn't feel that frantic panic that you were just describing of overcommitting. She just wouldn't do that. And she wrote, she's a brilliant writer, actually, better than she knows because she doesn't blog nearly enough. But she dropped a pearl of wisdom on Friday, which I shared far and wide. And it was about the eclipse, but it was also Friday happened to be, Eclipse Day also was International Happiness Day.
Oh, yes.
So Sally's blog is entitled, Here's How to Be Happy on International Day of Happiness. I've been on a quest to find joy in my life for a very long time. What's your secret to happiness? Okay, well, here's mine. It's acceptance. Acceptance of me, acceptance of you. Acceptance of my experience of the solar eclipse that we watched over the village of Harrington in England on a piece of land used by the US Air Force during World War II this very morning. In the past, I would have worried that I wasn't in the right place to get the best view, that I ought to make the moment mean something. Today I was able to see the fun in wearing 3 pairs of sunglasses so we could gaze straight at that life-giving orb in the sky and not be blinded by the light. Well, I've just listened to one of my favourite songs from the 1970s and I didn't realise that it contained the words so appropriate for today. Mama always told me not to look into the sights of the sun, but oh, Mama, that's where the fun is.
Nice.
What a gorgeous little thing. I tell you what, I talk to my clients quite a lot about the difference between hares and tortoises, and that we are hares. We go streaking off, racing at the finishing line. But frequently the tortoises overtake us. Sally's slow, considered and thoughtful, and you and I are fast and bish, bash, bosh. And I just think it's an attraction of opposites. When I read that, I calm right down, which is what Sally sells. She sells calm.
She sells calm. So you better tell me her URL so we can put it in the notes.
Oh, good idea. SallyGarfield.com.
Yeah.
GARFIE / Here's How to Be Happy on International Day of Happiness. I'll send it to you because you won't be able to write that down.
I was going to say. I might be fast, Judith, but I'm not that fast.
Well, I tell you what, if you go to her blog, since she only blogs infrequently, it's probably the top one, Nicola.
Okay, because it will stay there for a couple of months, will it?
It might do, yes. No, a couple of weeks. She's on a bit of a roll at the moment, but it'll be near the top, put it like that.
A bit like our mutual friend Marion, who never blogs enough for my liking.
No, she doesn't, and when she does, isn't she brilliant?
Oh, my God, awesome writing. Absolutely awesome writing, yeah.
What about you? What's fueled your fire?
Well, I'm going to go into a bit more detail further on about in the What's Impressed section, but what's my fueled my fire is Dan Norris of 7 Day Startup, who's one of my heroes, as you know. I saw a presentation he did at James Ramco's Superfast Business a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about how he aims just for 10% growth every month in his company, and he feels, he's very happy if he gets any, near that, or just, tops it a little bit perhaps.
Sorry, hang on a second. 10% every month?
Yes.
That's still massive,
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, he's in a fast growth startup, isn't he? So I suppose that's the thing. So I was going to ask you about that. So is that quite a lot to be growing a business?
Yes.
So I suppose 10% a month over a year.
It's more than double a year. If you doubled your business every year, you'd have terrible growth problems actually. But his type of business may be the exception, but 10% a month's a lot.
Oh, okay. Well, I imagine if you're doing manufacturing or something, or where you've got physical things where people come, but he's all his main overhead is the developers who fix people's WordPress problems, and he's
But imagine you had to find double that workforce every year and find 1/10 of that every month. It's quite a lot. But I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that you sounded as though that was quite small, but it's quite a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'm since Christmas when I launched clicksandleads.com, I've grown at between 50 and 100% a month, and that's got to.
But actually, that's what you said at the beginning. You see, problems come with growth, don't they? Not they're insurmountable. It's just, what lovely problems to have, but they are a risk, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I thought that the thing that I was thinking was it was nice that he had something that was measurable, and
yes,
and that it would get over the entrepreneur syndrome where you feel you have to work all the time. If you just set a goal like that, I think
I love that. Yeah. I totally agree. I learned that lesson. Do you remember me telling you I learned that lesson when I was a travel agent, and we would rack the brochures, as the expression of tour operators. And the thing I learned from tour operators is they have an annual allocation of hotel beds and flights on seats, and when they're gone, they're gone. And so, that's the antidote to working more and more. It's when we've sold everything, we just put our feet on the desk and open a bottle of champagne and work on next year's brochure. And quotas, yes, lovely. I think that's brilliant. It's not this endless. In my Club 100, I can cope with 40 people. I've got 36. When it's full, it's full. You've done your job then. I think they're fantastic, that sort of thing. It's measurable, yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing that's filled my file is still Paul McKenna. I've realised since I've been listening to him for the last couple of weeks, I've stopped waking up in the middle of the night in a panic.
Very good.
Because I did regularly wake up in the middle of the night in a panic thinking there was some horrible creepy crawly in my bed. But it was probably just indigestion that was waking me up, or my blood pressure rising or falling. But that's what I woke up in survival mode, and had a lot of trouble getting back to sleep again. But I've just realised for the last 3 or 4 nights I've slept right through. It's been amazing.
Marvellous. Do you listen to him just as you're going to sleep, or do you listen to him at another...
No, I listen to him in the mornings, because otherwise, if I did listen to him before I'm going to sleep, I would go to sleep.
Yes. Well, I do, but actually it does say it doesn't matter.
Ah, so your brain takes it in regardless, does it?
Yeah, that's right, yes.
A bit like
you wake up a bit later with the earbuds in your ears and you've got to take them out, but that's fine.
The thing I listen to podcasts at night, and the thing I like about those is they've got a sleep timer on it, so you can finish when this podcast episode finishes. Otherwise, you wake up and someone like James Schramko is still banging away in your ear at 5 in the morning.
Well, funnily enough, I put my iPad on my bedside table earlier in the week, and I was reading my Kindle in bed, and I thought, somebody's talking to me, and I thought I was hallucinating. I thought, I'd accidentally turned on, but funnily enough, it was me coming from our podcast on my... I must have accidentally pressed a button. I could hear myself talking to me.
Oh, that's spooky. That really is spooky.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. I think you've got a client challenge for us this week.
I have. It's rather a complex one with lots of overlapping. It's called Too Much Freedom. So let's say, as quite a few of my clients did, you woke up on Monday morning and you weren't feeling very workish. This is the eclipse impact. What are you going to do? You've got a 40-hour week yawning ahead of you and you're not feeling like it. You've got too much freedom. When you had a day job, you sort of went in and faked it, didn't you? And you still got paid. But when you're self-employed, what do? I think, obviously, you and I have got quite a lot of experience being self-employed. But if you can remember back to being a newbie, it's quite difficult, isn't it, to find a new structure, a new way of working in your sort of total freedom life that is still productive and gets things done. Do you know what I mean? So, for instance, there's that syndrome. I know you do. You do it less now, but we both used to do it much more, which is, unless you're always working, you feel like you're skiving. Do you know that one?
Yeah. I'm still battling with it, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. And this one, so this one is the opposite in a funny sort of way, which is I'm just in a permanent skive and I'm not feeling like it. How do I make myself work? And I think they're the flip side of the same coin. And what it made me realise, and I'm thinking of my entire life in the moment at this context of the abalone fisherman, is that you, me, we can all quite happily sit here from 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night and call it 40 hours work and say we've been working. But actually, if you're not feeling workish, you'd be better off saying, I'm just going to work solidly and productively until lunchtime, and then I'm going to take the afternoon off, or vice versa. And I think you have to know how to give yourself, permission to not work if you are genuinely poorly, and know that you will return to form at some point soon. I think there's a worry, isn't there, that if we fall off, we'll never get back on again. And I think there are ways of, when to give in to your body, what your body's telling you, and when to push on. Little energy boosts like a walk or a nap or a refresher or a proper lunch break. Too much freedom, Nicola, isn't there? You could imagine sitting as a relatively new self-employed person at your desk on Monday morning and going, ugh, not really feeling like it. Well, how am I going to, if I give myself permission to take time off, will I feel more like it tomorrow? Do I dare trust myself? Or have I got to pretend like I'm working and fiddle about on Facebook a bit? Or any tips that you can think of about creating, there's no need to replicate when you're self-employed, a sort of paler version of how you used to work when you had a day job. You've got the total freedom to create a working schedule that suits you, but you won't know what that is on day one or even in year one, I don't think. And I think it changes. So you've got to learn to trust yourself to do the work that needs doing. Lots of my clients are procrastinators, and many of them need a deadline, otherwise nothing gets done at all. I think something breathing down your neck is often quite helpful. How do you get over the concept you've got all this time and no idea how you're going to fit it, or that the reverse, which is if you take any time off, you're skiving even when you're poorly?
Oh, right, where do I start with all that?
It's quite a big and meaty one, isn't it? Yeah. And it flips, and it's the same opposite sides of the same coin, I think.
Well, when I first went self-employed, I had the kids, so they went off to school at 9 o'clock and came back at 3 o'clock. And we were living in a house, really, when I went seriously self-employed, we were living in a house where there were two other kids who did exactly the same. So we had a very limited time. So I think I got into very good habits of working flat out from 9 till 3 and then stopping. But my brain never shuts off from thinking about work. So, yeah, I think I did get into good habits. And I did have to, my brother-in-law used to come back and say, come on, let's all go to B&Q and choose the new taps, because we were renovating a house at the time. And I used to go, yeah, I can't do that till 3 o'clock, or I can't do that till the weekend. And he used to get very cross with me because he was off from the Navy and he was on a day off. And so he felt that was a good time to do it. But, it's about boundaries, isn't it? But yeah. Since I've got to the point where I know that what I'm doing is working, I did feel terrible pressure for the last 3 or 4 years to when I was trying to find what to do next that suited and would work. By work I mean bringing the money.
Yes.
So I did feel enormous pressure to keep trying new things in the hope that the next thing would. And actually, it's never one thing that you try that works. It's a combination of all the things you do, adding up to a positive effect. But I did feel a terrible compulsion to keep on top of new stuff, see if there's any new tactics coming out, watch what other people were doing, and try it out myself. But now I've found the thing that is working, running Facebook. Funny enough, all my clients are not coming from Facebook ads. They're coming from referral. But I think the Facebook ads are reminding people that I'm there and what I'm doing. So, and the podcasts are working, So I could just do Facebook ads and the podcast, and that would be the end of it. And I have started taking sneaky breaks in the afternoon
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you that, sneaky breaks. It's interesting you had to put the word sneaky in front of it. My question was going to be, if you get up in the morning and you don't feel very well, what do you do?
Well, I'm really lucky that I very rarely don't feel very well, but I have. No. A couple of years ago, when I was working with Neil, I had the norovirus. I had a hacking cough for a month, and then I had the norovirus, and I just felt absolutely wiped out. And I dragged myself to my desk because he's a very healthy person and he didn't have much truck with sickness. So, now I think I'd be a lot kinder to myself. I think I'd be able to give myself a day off at least,
And would you worry that you wouldn't feel like going back to work tomorrow? No, I don't think you would.
I never feel like that, because I know that if I don't go to work, then nothing's going to happen and no money's going to come in.
But in a way that sometimes incapacitates people, that fear. Do you know what I mean? It either motivates you or frightens you into inaction, I think.
Well, if you're going to be frightened into inaction by that responsibility, then you better go and get a job, because it ain't going to happen, love. If it's not, we have got 100% total responsibility, and I thought I had that down until I went to the Rich Sheffron weekend last year, when I realised that, and it felt like a bad thing. It felt like an onerous thing. It felt like a scary thing, and that I was somehow lacking. But then when I went to this weekend last year, I got it on such a fundamental level that it stopped scaring me and became liberating. Because a phrase they used on that weekend quite often was rocks are hard and water is wet, and life is the best life coach. Your results actually are the best life coach. So there's no fudging them, there's no dodging them, there's no getting away from it. But it actually felt quite freeing and liberating.
Because I think we all work our way round to this. It's a maturing, as a self-employed person, you realise that, they've done those experiments, haven't they, on, I don't know what they are, child psychology, or where you leave children alone in a room with a sweet, a marshmallow.
Yeah,
that's it. You leave them in the room with a marshmallow. You say, don't eat that, and if you don't eat that, you'll get another one later or something. And some of them can do that, and some of them can't do that. Some of them have got to gobble it up, and who cares? I won't get another one later. But I think when you're first self-employed, I remember it's a long time, but I remember that my main excitement about being self-employed was seeing daylight in the daytime.
Oh, yes.
I had a mini metro when I first started my accounting business, whizzing about London in my mini metro, over London bridges, going to see clients in the daylight, thinking, oh, God, this is great. But I can see that these days we don't travel about so much because we don't need to because of the internet. So you sit at home in front of your laptop by yourself. And it's too much freedom, isn't it? You can fake it quite easily, or you can not feel like it. And I think if you don't feel like it, I would probably, I think I'm quite good now at giving myself permission to go back to bed. But if I was feeling unworkish, not inspired, no muse visiting or whatever it was, I might say, right, I'm not going to do 8 hours today. I'm going to do 2 or 4 or 3 solid, focused things, so I can have the rest of the day off. What's the point in sitting there for 40 hours pretending to work when really you'd be better off with 20 solid hours and half the time off, wouldn't you?
Well, I think the other thing that I do is I think to myself every week, what's the 3 most important things I need to achieve this week?
Yeah.
Whether it's me doing it or someone else doing it, which means I have to then brief them, etc. So, and then if I'm sitting, and I do occasionally feel like that, I do occasionally think, I can't be asked today, but I then think to myself, okay, I'm going to give myself permission to go and watch the Kardashians with Phoebe on the sofa at 3:00 in the afternoon if I've done this one thing.
Yeah, so bribe yourself.
Well, yeah, and it's just about focus, isn't it? It's just thinking, what's the one thing I absolutely have to get done today? So last night, we went out for something to eat, and I remembered I was supposed to have sent these PowerPoint presentations to this woman, and so I just, while she was faffing about putting her makeup on, I just got up, sent the PowerPoint presentations, and then I was able to enjoy the evening. So there's always just one thing you could do. And actually, it's not even necessarily a deadline-driven thing. What's the one thing I could do today to move my business forward, and then I can go?
Oh, no, I think that's brilliant. Actually, it doesn't even need to be to move my business forward. It just means to do something. And actually, after you've done something, you'll probably feel a bit better. So you can either give yourself permission to have the afternoon off, or you'll feel so much better you'll want to carry on doing a bit more, I think. But I do think sometimes I like the idea of your little sneaky breaks in the afternoon. They're an energy booster. They're a refresher, aren't they? Lots of my clients own dogs. Take the dog out for a walk and see if you don't feel better when you come back. You can't not feel better after a walk, actually, because it oxygenates you.
Yeah, and it releases serotonin, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So
there we go. The challenge is, and it's a lovely challenge actually that I would relish and recommend to everybody. Now that you're self-employed, how are you going to create just enough discipline and structure in your working week to make you feel supported, not sort of all over the shop? And I often recommend, I use my Outlook calendar like we used to use a school timetable at school, where you'd at the beginning of the term sort of turn your notebook sideways and put 5 days across and hours down and colour in things, colouring in. And I don't mind if people do it manually, just as long as you've got something that holds you accountable, because you are the thing that holds you accountable now out here in this place of too much freedom.
Yeah, and the other thing that was, I've realised it a couple of weeks ago, that makes me feel stressed having everything filled up. So I've emptied my mornings so that I can do some self-care stuff. And I thought I am a morning person, so I do work better in the mornings. But having said that, I don't work well if I've got to do everything in the mornings and then have the afternoons off, because I find that, that doesn't work so well for clients and things. So what I've started doing is just blocking out every morning of the week, so I can do whatever I like in the morning. And that feels really naughty.
Yes.
I'm really having to, force myself to not come and work. But at least people don't expect you to be there, so it feels like freedom, which is really brilliant.
So you're saying they expect you to be there in the afternoon, or they don't expect you to be? I don't
Yeah,
get that
they more expect you to be there in the afternoons, and it's not even that my clients have got a call on my time or anything. It's just that, because I work when I want to work, really. But I just find that it's the opposite way around to how I think it would work best for me. Having mornings off and then coming to the desk around lunchtime is working much better for me than I would have thought, which is just do all the work in the morning and have the afternoon off.
Well, interestingly, no. This is what you're doing. You remember the Miracle Morning book? I mean,
Yes.
In effect, that's what he's saying is having, or he recommends, because he assumes everybody works a 40-hour week, that you get up early and have that time for yourself. But actually, you don't need to. You've said, I can, make the mornings about me and the afternoons about my clients. And actually, I mostly do that too, except Monday, which is all about them. I coach clients from 12 noon onwards, and everything before 12 noon is mine. And so actually we've chosen the same route. But it doesn't matter what you do, I think. The point is that trial and error and experimentation until you find a place where you know what works for you. And I think at the beginning, too much freedom can be a little bit like kid in a candy store.
Yeah. And the other thing I've done is I've got an online diary, which, I use the one you recommend, and I've blocked out Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons for clients calls. And Wednesday, all days for podcasts and webinars. So I've actually got all day Monday, all day Friday, and Tuesday and Thursday mornings off.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone, for God's sake.
No. Well, you told everybody worldwide, including whoever it was in Guatemala.
I'm doing a 2-day week, effectively.
Well, there's the abalone fisherman. You've become the abalone fisherman. Hooray.
A word from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by clicksandleads.com. Clicksandleads.com believe in affordable traffic and leads for everyone. They'll set up your Facebook ad campaign, page likes, leads or remarketing, then they'll manage it for you. They'll even split test your ads and audiences to find the best performing ones. Game-changing marketing from clicksandleads.com. Okay, so word of the week then.
Well, so mine follows on deliciously from challenge of the week, which is permission. Obviously, you have to give yourself permission, if it feels difficult or impossible to work, or that you're poorly or you need time off. And I find my clients can't do that. So what they do is they ask me to give them permission to do that. And when I do that, they go, oh, of course, I know you're right, Judith. It's almost like it's the skiving thing, so permission is, if somebody else gives you permission, somebody like Judith says, it's all right, you don't need to work today, you're poorly, then it validates what you already knew and makes you feel a little bit stronger and confident about making that decision for yourself. But I think as we get, more mature again, we need to just be able to give ourselves permission for whatever needs to happen around here. And sometimes it might be permission to work longer, sometimes it might be permission to work shorter, sometimes it might be permission to go to B&Q and get the new taps in the middle of the week or watch the Kardashians.
And it's interesting because when I work with Neil and I'd perhaps say I don't feel well, he would give me permission. He would say, well, take the day off then, you daft thing. But I still felt guilty. I think it's being accountable to another person. I need to be able to give myself permission rather than get permission from someone else.
Well, that's exactly it. It doesn't matter where we get it from, you or me, just as long as we find it.
Yeah, absolutely. So carrying on nicely from that thing of not working in the mornings, I was horrified to find an 8 a.m. appointment in my diary this morning. It was Rob Corey of Feed a Starving Crowd fame. He's written a book called Feed a Starving Crowd. He's got a Facebook community which I highly recommend, and the book's brilliant as well. And he's in Australia, so obviously my 8 a.m. in the morning was his 7 p.m. in the evening, and he's got 2 small children. So we've been trying to fix up this appointment for ages because I really wanted to interview him. But I was struck by what an amazing... I said to him, that whole concept, that whole phrase has just gone straight into popular folklore online. It's a bit like James Schramko's Own the Racecourse. Sometimes a phrase comes along that just sums up a concept so well. And he's a marketing chap, and he says, don't waste your time trying to educate people. Don't find a starving crowd and feed them, and life will just get so much easier for you. And I was just reminded of some of the clients that we've all worked with and a starving crowd isn't necessarily someone with a pain or a problem. It can also be someone with a passion, because passionate people will consume everything to do with their passion like they were starving.
Yes.
So it's a nice way of summing up that concept of getting in front of a hungry crowd and giving them what they want, and then you can't go wrong.
Yes. What's his name?
Robert Corey, Coorey.
Coorey. Okay.
Yeah, Feed a Starving Crowd. This is his book, and he's a really, really nice chap. I mean, I've known that for a while, and it was borne out on this shockingly early interview this morning. Stumbled across or analysed a starving crowd of the Facebook thing. There's lots of people want Facebook ads. Lots of people try and learn how to do it. Lots of people, they give up or whatever, but. So finding an affordable solution for those people who weren't suited by the agencies who need 10 grand a month ad spend is a starving crowd, as far as I'm concerned. So I think it's working so well. So if anyone is listening here and they're thinking of starting a business, first identify your starving crowd and you won't go far wrong.
And word of the week was?
Well, that's it. It's 4 words, actually. Feed a starving crowd.
Okay, cheating. I've got you.
Run it all in so quick, it'll be fine.
Yes, okay.
So what's impressed then?
I love films.
Yes.
I saw a film over the weekend online, and it was the actress in it was nominated for an Oscar, but I hadn't seen it. It was one of those films, sometimes they slip by you. You don't see that, you don't see the hype, and you don't go to the movies. It was called Blue Eyes, and it's a Tim Burton film. And as you know, Tim Burton's as mad as a box of frogs. I think you'll like this film very much. It's Amy Adams was starring as. It's the story, a true life story, excuse me, of a husband and wife team, where in the 50s and 60s, and she was an artist, very prolific artist, churning out some quite kitschy pictures of waif-like children with enormous eyes.
Oh, I know them.
And yes, that's right. And they were called the Keens, Keane. That's it. But she was the artist, and he wasn't. He was a con artist, and he persuaded the world that he was the painter. And what impressed me was, despite being a terrible spiv, he was very commercial, and he asked if he could use the walls of a rather trendy club as gallery space. They were on the way to the toilets, but nevertheless, people passed by and saw them and liked them, and they took off. And eventually, they were the sort of things that he couldn't sell. He certainly couldn't sell his own grisly Parisian street scenes, and nobody really wanted these kitschy, big-eyed waif children either to begin with, until they became sort of all the rage in the 60s, actually. And it was her that was doing all the artwork. Yeah, he pretty much got her locked up in the attic, churning out these artworks. And he was out in the world. Yeah, he was out in the world pretending he'd done them, but selling them in large numbers. So they did awfully well. But a couple of things came out of the film for me in a business context, which is what always happens, obviously, which is they did have their own gallery in the end. And at a gallery opening, when the walls were covered with her pictures, and she was there, but she couldn't let on she was the artist, there were a lot of sort of freeloaders had come to the party and they weren't selling. So it dawned on this grisly spiv husband, that they should turn them into posters. And of course, the posters just flew off the shelves, and they made loads of money at the posters. And you remember the 60s, we used to buy posters and stick them on our bedroom wall and things like that. So it was the age of the poster, which I'm not sure happens anymore. And what they did was they divided the art world into snobs who thought it was the most ghastly thing they'd ever seen. And to be honest, I probably would have been in that camp. And the people, including Tim Burton, the filmmaker, who liked them and collected them, even though they were kitsch. So you can appreciate kitsch, some people can. And the film opens with Andy Warhol saying something that I also learned from my when I went on a wine tasting course. And it's a bit like Find a Starving Crowd. Andy Warhol said that nothing which is intrinsically bad sells in large numbers. So even though you don't like it, if it's selling big, it's of a quality. You can't con people, is the essence of the message. So it's a bit like The Sound of Music, which is something we love to sneer at, but it's the biggest grossing film of all time because, of course, it's not intrinsically bad. And it's the same the wine tasting teacher taught me with Matthias Rosé, which we would all be snobbish about. It's a massive seller because it's intrinsically a good thing.
It's a very quaffable rosé.
Well, it might not be to your taste because you're a snob, but bad stuff. No, I'm not saying. No, I don't mean you. I mean one. It might not be to one's taste because one is a snob.
Yeah.
But it sells massively, and it couldn't sell massively if it was
intrinsically bad.
Intrinsically good. Yeah, that's right. And the same with her art. So you can con people, but you can't con them forever. And the fact that some people like them and they sell in big numbers means it's intrinsically a good thing. And I thought that was a very good quote. And it is a bit like find your starving crowd. You can't con your starving crowd. You have to have something intrinsically good to sell to them. So I learned that all from watching a film called Blue Eyes, which I highly recommend.
Oh, very nice. And lots of lessons to be learned there.
Well, they're everywhere I look, Nicola.
Yeah.
I can't not see them. What about you? What's impressed you this week?
Well, I saw a film called The Judge, which
I saw it. It's brilliant, isn't it? I loved it.
Yeah, we sobbed through it rather badly, and it did take about 3 hours to watch because we had to keep stopping and running back because we were asking questions and things. But I really enjoyed that. But what's really impressed me this week is the whole concept of transparency, income reports online. And interestingly, it ties back into what you've just been talking about, that you can't con people for any length of time because a lot of the big name internet marketers are being increasingly pilloried by their peers for shady tactics, selling on mailing lists where they promise they don't, selling them to boiler room sales, telephone sales teams and things like that. And the people that are really winning are the people like Pat Flynn, John Lee Dumas, Dan Norris, WP Curve, all of whom publish their income and expenditure reports online monthly. And I just think that's a very, very transparent and trust-inducing thing to do, if a bit terrifying, because we're also used to trying to hide everything from the Inland Revenue.
Yeah.
We're a bit, obviously those people are just living in a very above-the-board, transparent way. And I thought...
In an abundant way.
Yeah.
In an abundant way, actually, because some people are very happy to pay tax.
Yes, and why wouldn't you when you've gone from zero to 50,000 a month in...
And also it's a political thing, isn't it? It's, I'm happy to support the community. I've been very lucky myself. I'm happy to support the community of which I'm a member.
Yeah. But that's how I got into podcasting, was John Lee Dumas's income reports. Pat Flynn's been doing it for his entire life online, and Dan Norris has started doing it with WP Curve, which is where the whole 10% growth thing comes from, because you can actually see whether he achieves it or not.
I did do it for my clients last year who are coaches. Because making a living as a coach is quite tricky, and in my Club 100 I have a subgroup that's for the half a dozen coaches there are in there, and I went in there and told them exactly how much I'd earned over each of the years since I'd been coaching for a living, and why it was up some years and why it was down other years, and how I believed they could all do it too, in figures. And I actually was frightened that it was going to come across as bragging.
Yeah, because you've been very successful compared with most coaches.
Well, I didn't want them to think I was going, look, I'm the big I am. I was saying I wasn't really coming at it from a place of transparency either. I wanted them to know what was really possible for them. And
how you'd done it in terms of what product structure you had and things like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Anyway, I just something just impressed me this week, and I thought I'd share it. So I think
that's a nice idea. It's a very close relative of authenticity, which we all love very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can't be authentic without being transparent.
To a certain degree, I agree, yes. But truthful, isn't it? It's truthful. And actually, a realistic truth is more encouraging than, the much vaunted, multimillionaire dream that everybody chases.
Success. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Overnight success that takes 10 years every time.
Yes.
Good stuff. Well, another stonking week, Judith. So thank you very much, and we'll see you same time, same place.
Bye, Nicola.
Bye.
You've been listening to Nicola Cairncross and Judith Morgan. The podcast is called Own It, Your Business and Your Life. Do come and visit us at ownitthepodcast.com. We'd love to hear your feedback.
You can find out more about Judith and visit her on her website at judithmorgan.com, and you can find Nicola at nicolacairncross.com.